English Daily, the podcast.
Your English journey starts now. Hey, English learners, welcome back to your podcast, the English Daily Podcast.
Yes, we're so happy to have you here today.
Today's episode is all about how to talk about mental health in the workplace in English.
That's right, and we're going to make it really practical for you, especially if you work in English-speaking environments.
So whether you're a beginner or already speaking well, you'll find something useful here. We're going to cover really important phrases that professionals use every day.
Absolutely. This is such an important topic, and I'm really excited to dive into it with you.
Before we start, let me just say that workplace mental health is becoming a huge focus in modern companies everywhere, not just in English-speaking countries.
Yeah, I think there's been a real shift in how organizations think about employee well-being. It's not just about physical safety anymore, right?
Exactly. It's about emotional safety, psychological safety, all of that. And that's why we're here today, to give you the language tools to navigate these conversations professionally and with confidence.
And I have to say, this is one of those topics where having the right words really matters. It can make a huge difference in how you're perceived and how effective you are at work.
So let's get started. We've prepared some really great content for you, and I think you're going to find it super useful.
Anna, let's start with something that many people experience, but often struggle to talk about. Burnout. How would you define burnout in a professional context?
That's a great question, Jack. Burnout is basically a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress at work. And the key thing is that it's not just about being tired, it's about feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, and like you can't keep up with the demands being placed on you.
That's a really clear definition. So, what are some common signs of burnout that people might notice in themselves or their colleagues?
Well, let me think. Some common signs include feeling constantly exhausted, even after sleeping, becoming more cynical or negative about work, having trouble concentrating, and just feeling like you're not making a difference anymore. It's like you lose your sense of purpose, you know?
I see. And in English-speaking workplaces, how do people usually bring up burnout? What phrases do they use?
There are several ways to discuss this professionally. You might say something like, "I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately," or "I think I'm experiencing some burnout." Another common phrase is, "I need to take a step back and reassess my workload."
I love that last one. It's proactive and solution-focused, rather than just complaining about being tired.
Exactly. And that's really important in professional settings. You want to come across as someone who is self-aware and looking for solutions, not just venting.
What about if you're a manager and one of your team members comes to you saying they're feeling burnt out? What should you say?
That's such an important situation to handle with care. As a manager, you might say, "Thank you for sharing this with me. I really appreciate your honesty." Then you could follow up with, "Let's work together to find a solution," or "What support do you need right now?"
Those are really supportive phrases. And I think using phrases like, "I'm here to support you," or "Your well-being is important to me," can go a long way in creating a safe space.
Definitely. But also, Jack, I want to be careful here. Not everyone who feels overwhelmed is experiencing clinical burnout. Sometimes people just need a break or some help managing their time. So it's good to use phrases that open a dialogue rather than making assumptions.
That's a really good point. So instead of saying, "You must be burnt out," you might say, "It sounds like you've been working really hard. How can I help?"
Exactly. That kind of phrasing is much more collaborative and less presumptive.
What about when you need to use sick leave or mental health days? What are appropriate phrases for that?
That's such an important practical question. You might say, "I need to take a mental health day," or "I'm not feeling well and need to take some time off to recover." Another professional way is, "I need to take some personal time for my well-being."
And I think it's worth mentioning that many companies now have specific policies around mental health days, so it's becoming more accepted to be open about this.
Absolutely. The conversation around mental health in the workplace has really evolved, and it's becoming much more normalized to talk about these things.
Let's talk about another really important aspect: how to check in on colleagues and offer support. This is something that can make such a difference in workplace culture.
Yes, and I think this is where many people feel uncertain. They want to help, but don't know what to say or how to approach the situation.
Right, and that's completely normal. So, what are some good ways to check in on a colleague in a professional and supportive way?
One of the simplest approaches is just to ask directly, but gently. You might say, "Hey, how are you doing? I've noticed you've seemed a bit stressed lately." Or, "Are you doing okay? I wanted to check in on you."
What if the person doesn't want to talk about it? How do you respect their boundaries while still showing you care?
That's such an important consideration. You could say something like, "I totally understand if you'd rather not talk about it, but I wanted you to know I'm here if you need anything." Or, "No pressure at all, but know that I'm happy to listen if you ever want to chat."
I think those phrases show genuine care while respecting the other person's autonomy. What about when you want to offer more practical help?
Good question. You could say, "Is there anything I can do to lighten your load?" Or, "Would it help if I took some of this off your plate?" Another great phrase is, "Let's tackle this together. What can I take on?"
Those are really collaborative and solution-oriented approaches. And I think it shows that you're not just offering empty sympathy, but actual practical support.
Exactly. And sometimes just asking, "What do you need?" can be really powerful because it gives the other person control over what kind of support they receive.
What about in a more formal setting, like with your manager or in a team meeting? How do you check in on someone's well-being professionally?
In more formal settings, you might use phrases like, "I want to make sure everyone feels supported in this project." Or, "How is everyone managing with the current workload?" You could also say, "Let's take a moment to check in. How is everyone feeling about our progress?"
Those are great for team settings, and I think it's important to remember that as a leader, setting the tone for these conversations can really help create a more supportive culture.
Absolutely. Leaders have such an important role in normalizing these conversations. When someone in a leadership position asks, "How are you really doing?" and follows up genuinely, it signals to everyone that it's safe to be honest.
What about if you're concerned about a colleague, but you're not that close to them? How do you approach that situation sensitively?
That's a tricky situation. I think you can still check in, but maybe keep it a bit more general. You might say, "Hi, I just wanted to check in. Everything going okay?" Or, "I've noticed you seem a bit quieter than usual. Just wanted to make sure you're all right."
I think the key is to be genuine, but not intrusive. You're showing you care without making them feel watched or judged.
Exactly. And sometimes just a small gesture, like bringing them a coffee and saying, "Thought you might need this," can go a long way in showing you care without needing a big conversation.
I love that. It's such a simple but thoughtful gesture.
Small acts of kindness can make such a difference, Jack. It's not always about the big speeches.
Now let's talk about something that can be challenging for many people: requesting accommodations or discussing your needs at work. This is especially important when it comes to mental health.
Yes, this is a topic that many people find difficult to navigate. There's often a fear of being seen as difficult or not committed to the job if you ask for adjustments.
And that's unfortunate because accommodations are so important for both employee well-being and productivity. So let's talk about how to request them professionally.
First, I think it's important to frame the conversation around how it benefits the work, not just your personal comfort. You might say, "I've been thinking about how I can be most effective in my role, and I think some adjustments might help."
What are some specific phrases people can use when requesting accommodations?
Great question. Some examples include, "I would like to request a flexible working arrangement," or, "Would it be possible to adjust my work schedule to better support my well-being?" Another good one is, I'm looking for ways to manage my workload more effectively. Can we discuss some options?
I think it's also important to be specific about what you're asking for. Instead of just saying, I need help, you might say, I'm hoping to work from home 2 days a week to reduce commuting stress, or I would benefit from having more structure in my day.
Yes, being specific makes it much easier for your manager to understand and respond to your needs. And it shows that you've thought about what would actually help.
What about when you need to discuss mental health accommodations specifically? That can feel even more sensitive.
I understand that can feel vulnerable, but there are ways to approach it professionally. You might say, I have a health condition I'd like to discuss in confidence, or I'm working with a professional on some health concerns and wanted to discuss what support might be helpful.
I think it's also worth mentioning that in many countries, employees have legal rights to request accommodations, so it's worth understanding what those are in your location.
Absolutely. And you don't necessarily have to disclose specific diagnoses. You can focus on what you need to be effective in your role. Phrases like, I need some adjustments to help me perform at my best, keep the focus on productivity while getting the support you need.
What if your request is denied or met with resistance? How do you handle that professionally?
That's a tough situation. You might ask, can you help me understand what the concerns are? Or is there a compromise we could reach? Another approach is, what would need to change for this to be possible in the future?
Those are really good strategies for keeping the conversation constructive, and I think it's important to document these conversations as well.
Definitely. Keeping a record of your requests and any agreements made is always wise.
What about when you need to discuss workload or deadlines? Those are related to mental health too.
Absolutely. And this is something everyone faces at some point. Phrases like, I want to make sure I'm prioritizing correctly. Can we go over my tasks? Or, I'm concerned about the timeline. Can we discuss what's realistic? Are really helpful.
And I think it's important to reframe this from, I can't do this, to, here's what I can commit to. So instead of, I can't finish this by Friday, you might say, given my current workload, I can have this done by Monday. Does that work?
That's such an important distinction. It keeps you professional and solution-oriented while still being honest about your limits.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about how to create positive work environments where mental health is prioritized. This is really about being part of the solution.
Yes, and I think this is something everyone can contribute to, not just managers or HR. It's about the culture we create together as a team.
So, what are some phrases or approaches people can use to foster psychological safety in their teams?
One powerful approach is to invite input and different perspectives. You might say, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this, especially if you see it differently. Or, what are your thoughts? I value different perspectives.
What about when someone makes a mistake or something goes wrong? How do you address that in a way that's supportive rather than punitive?
That's such an important question. Instead of, who did this? Or, how did this happen? You might say, what can we learn from this? Or, let's figure out how to fix this together. Another good approach is, what systemic changes can we make to prevent this in the future?
Those phrases really shift the focus from blame to learning and improvement. I think that makes people feel much safer to be honest about mistakes.
Exactly. And when people feel safe to admit mistakes, you often catch problems earlier and create a more innovative environment.
What about recognizing good work and showing appreciation? How does that contribute to mental health?
Oh, it's so important. Simple phrases like, I really appreciate your work on this, or thank you for your contribution, it made a real difference, can boost morale so much. You could also say, I noticed how you handled that situation. That was really impressive.
And I think it's important to be specific in your appreciation, not just say, good job. Something like, the way you handled that difficult customer was really impressive. Shows you're paying attention.
Absolutely. Specific recognition feels more genuine and meaningful.
What about when there's conflict or tension in the team? How do you address that constructively?
Conflict can be really challenging. Some helpful approaches might be, I'd like to understand your perspective on this, or can we find a way forward that works for everyone? Another good phrase is, let's take a step back and look at what we're both trying to achieve.
I think it's also important to create space for people to voice concerns. Something like, if anyone has concerns, I'd really like to hear them, can open up important conversations.
Definitely. And sometimes as a leader or team member, you need to actively create that space and make people feel heard.
What about promoting work-life balance in everyday conversations? What can people say?
That's a great question. You might say, remember to take your breaks, or I think it's important we all disconnect after work hours. As a manager, you could say, I don't expect anyone to work late tonight. Let's all go home on time. Or, please use your vacation days. They're important for your well-being.
Those are such simple but powerful phrases, and I think when leaders model this behavior, it really sets the tone for the whole team.
Absolutely. Actions speak louder than words, but combining good actions with good language creates the strongest message.
What about when you notice someone is struggling, but you're not their manager? Can you still help create a positive environment?
Of course, you might say, I've noticed you seem stressed. Is there anything I can do to help? Or, you've been working really hard. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, too. Even simple things like, hey, let's grab a coffee and take a quick break can make a big difference.
I think the key is just to be observant and caring. You don't need to have all the answers. Just showing you care can help.
And sometimes just being the person who brings positive energy to the team can make such a difference. A simple, good morning, hope you all have a great day, can set a nice tone.
Let's talk about something that many people find really challenging: setting boundaries and navigating difficult conversations around mental health and workload.
Yes, this is such an important skill. Many people struggle with saying no or setting limits, but it's crucial for long-term well-being.
So, what are some professional ways to set boundaries at work?
One approach is to be clear but respectful. You might say, I won't be able to take on additional projects right now as I'm focused on current priorities. Or, I need to decline this meeting as it conflicts with my other commitments.
What about when someone keeps asking you to do things even after you've said no?
That's a tough situation. You might need to be more firm. I understand this is urgent, but I won't be able to help this time. You might want to check with someone else. Or, I've already committed to other tasks, so I won't be able to take this on without something else being moved.
I think it also helps to offer alternatives when you can, like, I can't do X, but I could do Y instead. Or, have you considered asking Z?
Definitely. That keeps the conversation collaborative rather than just closing doors.
What about when you need to have a difficult conversation with your manager about stress or mental health?
Those conversations can feel scary, but being prepared helps. You might start with, I wanted to have a private conversation with you about something important. Or, can we schedule some time to discuss my well-being and how I can continue contributing effectively?
What if you're worried about how it might affect your career or how you're perceived?
That's a real concern for many people, and I don't want to dismiss it. But I think the key is to frame things around performance and effectiveness. You might say, I want to perform at my best, and I think some adjustments would help me do that. Or, I'm looking for ways to be more sustainable in my role long term.
And I think it's worth noting that companies are increasingly recognizing that employee well-being directly impacts their bottom line, so many are becoming more supportive.
Absolutely. That said, if you're in a workplace that truly doesn't support these conversations, that might be something to consider as you think about your long-term career.
What about saying no to extra work in a way that's still positive and collaborative?
Some good phrases include, I'd love to help, but I'm at capacity right now. Could this wait? Or, I need to focus on my current commitments. Can we revisit this next week? Another approach is, that's outside my area of expertise. You might get better results working with someone else.
I think it's also important to remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for sustainable performance.
Exactly. And saying no to some things allows you to say yes to others and do them well. Quality over quantity, right?
That's a great way to think about it.
And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of ourselves enables us to take care of our work.
What about when work starts bleeding into personal time? How do you address that?
You might say something like, I'm not checking emails after 7 p.m. to maintain work-life balance. Or, I'll be offline this weekend. Let's connect on Monday. If someone messages you outside work hours, you could say, I'll look into this when I'm back in the office tomorrow.
What if there's pushback when you set these boundaries?
That's possible. You might respond with, I understand this might be an adjustment, but I believe this will help me be more effective during work hours. Or, I'm committed to doing great work, and this is what I need to sustain that.
I think consistency is key here. Once you set a boundary, try to stick to it. If you sometimes answer emails at 10 p.m., people will expect you always to.
Absolutely. Boundaries only work when you enforce them consistently.
Now let's talk about something really important. How to seek help and access resources when you're struggling. This is a crucial skill that many people don't know how to use.
Yes, and I think there's sometimes a stigma around asking for help, but it's actually a sign of strength and self-awareness.
So, what are some professional ways to ask for help with mental health concerns at work?
You might start by contacting HR or your manager. Phrases like, I'd like to learn about the mental health resources available to employees, or can you tell me what support is available for employees who are struggling?
What about if your company has an employee assistance program, which many do?
That's a great resource. You could say, I'd like to access the Employee Assistance Program, or can you provide me with information about how to use our EAP services?
And I think it's good to know that these programs are usually confidential, which can make it easier to reach out.
Exactly. Many people don't realize that EAPs often provide free counseling sessions and other resources. It's worth checking what your company offers.
What about when you want to talk to your manager about seeing a therapist or counselor? How do you bring that up?
You might say, I'm working with a mental health professional and may need some flexibility during treatment. Or, I'm seeking additional support and wanted to let you know. You don't need to share specifics if you don't want to.
What about when you need to take time off for mental health reasons beyond a day or two?
You might need to have a conversation about taking a medical leave or a longer period of recovery. Phrases like, I need to take a medical leave for my health, or I'm seeking treatment and will need some time off to recover, are appropriate.
And in many places, there are legal protections for this kind of leave, so it's worth understanding your rights.
Definitely. Knowing your rights can give you confidence when having these conversations.
What about if you're a manager and you want to connect someone with resources? How do you do that sensitively?
You might say, I care about your well-being and I want you to know about the resources available. Or, have you considered speaking with a professional? Our company offers the support. You could also say, I'm here to support you in getting the help you need.
I think it's also important to follow up and check in after someone has accessed resources. Something like, how are you doing? Have the resources been helpful?
Yes, ongoing support matters. And I think just knowing that someone cares enough to follow up can make a big difference.
What about peer support networks or mental health first aid in the workplace? Have you seen those becoming more common?
Yes, absolutely. Many companies now have trained mental health first aiders or peer support programs. If your workplace doesn't have something like that, you might suggest it. You could say, I think it would be great if we had peer support training available. Or, have you considered starting a mental health support group?
That's a great proactive approach, and I think being an advocate for these resources can help create positive change in any organization.
Definitely. Sometimes we have to be the change we want to see, right?
Now let's dive into our vocabulary breakdown. We've collected some really useful phrases for today's topic.
Yes, these are phrases that you'll definitely hear in English-speaking workplaces. Let me share them with you.
Let's start with our first phrase.
Burnout. This is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion from prolonged work stress. Example, I've been feeling signs of burnout lately and need to take some time to recover.
That's such an important term. What's the next one?
Workload. This refers to the amount of work someone has to do. Example, my workload has been really heavy recently, and I'd like to discuss how to manage it better.
Great. What about when we want to talk about flexibility?
Flexible working arrangement, or flex schedule. This refers to work schedules that can be adjusted. Example, I'm looking for a flexible working arrangement to better balance my personal needs.
That's really useful for modern workplaces. What's next?
Mental Health Day, a day off specifically for mental health and well-being. Example, I'm going to take a mental health day tomorrow to recharge.
What about when we need to describe how we're feeling?
Overwhelmed. This means feeling unable to cope with the amount of work or stress you have. Example, I've been feeling overwhelmed with the current project deadlines.
That's a very common word in workplace conversations. What's next?
Psychological safety. This is the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for making mistakes or sharing ideas. Example, our team has created a culture of psychological safety where everyone feels comfortable speaking up.
That's such an important concept. What about when discussing support?
Employee Assistance Program, EAP. A workplace program that provides confidential counseling and support for employees. Example, have you tried using our Employee Assistance Program? They offer free counseling sessions.
Very useful. What about talking about well-being?
Well-being. This refers to a person's overall health, happiness, and comfort. Example, employee well-being is a priority for our company, and we offer various wellness programs.
What about when we want to offer help to colleagues?
Lighten someone's load, to help reduce someone's work or stress. Example, can I help lighten your load by taking on some of these tasks?
That's a really natural phrase. What's next?
Work-life balance. The equilibrium between work responsibilities and personal life. Example, I'm focusing on maintaining a healthy work-life balance this year.
What about when discussing accommodations?
Reasonable accommodations. Changes or adjustments to a job or workplace that help an employee perform their job. Example, the company provides reasonable accommodations for employees with health conditions.
That's an important term, especially for those who need specific support. What's next?
Self-care. Activities and practices that help maintain physical and mental health. Example, practicing self-care is essential for managing stress.
What about when we need to discuss stress?
Stress management. Techniques and strategies for dealing with stress. Example, I've been working on stress management techniques like meditation and exercise.
Those are great coping strategies. What's next?
Toxic work environment. A workplace with unhealthy, harmful, or unpleasant conditions. Example, it took me a long time to realize I was in a toxic work environment.
That's an important phrase to recognize. What about when discussing boundaries?
Set boundaries. To establish limits on what you will and won't accept. Example, I've learned to set boundaries around my working hours to protect my well-being.
That's such an important skill. What's next?
Check in on someone to ask how someone is doing, especially if you're concerned about them. Example, I wanted to check in on you. I've noticed you've seemed stressed lately.
That's a really caring phrase. What about when discussing recovery?
Recovery. The process of returning to good health after illness or burnout. Example, I'm taking some time off for my recovery and will be back soon.
That's important to understand in a mental health context. What's the last one?
Open conversation. A discussion that is honest and welcoming, where people feel comfortable sharing. Example, we want to encourage open conversations about mental health in our workplace.
These are all such valuable phrases for the workplace. Thanks so much for breaking those down, Anna.
You're welcome, Jack. I hope our listeners find these really helpful in their professional lives.
Now it's time for our reflection questions. These are questions for you to think about or discuss with others. Let's go through them together.
Question 1. Have you ever experienced burnout? If so, how did you address it, and what did you learn from that experience?
Question 2. Think about a time when a colleague checked in on you or offered support. How did that make you feel? And what did they say or do that was most helpful?
Question 3. What boundaries do you currently have in place at work or would you like to set? How might you communicate these boundaries professionally?
Question 4. How comfortable are you discussing mental health with your manager or colleagues? What would make you more comfortable?
Question 5. What is one phrase from today's episode that you would like to use in your workplace? How do you think it would help you?
Question 6. How does your current workplace support employee well-being? Are there resources or practices you'd like to see implemented?
Question 7. Think about someone in your life who might be struggling with their mental health. What is one thing you could do or say to support them?
Question 8. What is one change you could make in your daily routine to better support your own mental health and well-being?
Question 9. How can you contribute to creating a more psychologically safe environment in your team or workplace?
Question 10. What did you learn today that surprised you or changed the way you think about workplace mental health?
These questions are meant to help you reflect and apply what we've learned today. Don't worry if you don't have answers to all of them right now. That's okay.
Well, we've covered so much today, from understanding burnout to setting boundaries, from checking in on colleagues to accessing resources. I hope you found this really valuable.
Yes, and I want to remind everyone that mental health is just as important as physical health, especially in the workplace. Having the right words and phrases can help you advocate for yourself and support others.
And remember, it's okay to not be okay. What matters is that we have the tools to navigate these conversations and the courage to seek help when we need it.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today on the English Daily Podcast. We hope you feel more confident now when discussing mental health in professional settings.
Yes, and keep practicing these phrases. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become. That's how we build fluency, through real, practical conversations.
That's right. So don't be afraid to try these out in your own workplaces or with your English-speaking friends.
Before we go, I want to thank you all for listening. We're so grateful to have you here with us.
And we hope you'll join us next time for more English learning adventures. Take care of yourselves and see you next time.
Yes, everyone, remember to be kind to yourself and others. See you next time.
Bye for now. Your learning journey doesn't stop here. Keep improving your English. Click the next video or explore more episodes we've picked just for you. See you in the next lesson.